So all our input components are ready. Now let's start building our login form. So in the screens folder, let's add a new file called loginscreen.js. Here's our function component. Now let's import the style sheet module from React Native and create our styles object right away. Okay. Now in this component, first we're going to add a screen component and import it on the top. So import screen from, we go up to our components folder and load the screen module. Now inside this screen component, first we need to render our logo. So here we need an image component. I'm going to set the source to require. We go up to our assets folder and load logo-red.png. I gave you this file earlier in the course. So here's the source. We should give it a bunch of styles. So let's set the style to styles.image. Well, styles.logo. Now let's define the styles. So I'm going to set the width to 80 pixels, the height to 80 pixels as well. We want to put the logo in the center of the horizontal axis. So here we set align self to center, because by default, the flex direction of our container, that is the screen component, is set to vertical axis. So that is our primary axis. And as you know, with align items, we can align items along the horizontal axis. So here we're overriding the alignment for this particular component, okay? Now we want to add some margin on the top and some margin below this logo, okay? So let's test our implementation. Save the changes. We go to app.js. We're going to remove all the code here and render our login screen. So I'm going to throw away all these categories. I told you this is just code for testing. So here we just need to return our login screen. Okay. Now over here, our logo is in the right place. Beautiful. Now below this, we're going to add 2 input fields and a button. So back to our login screen. Here I'm going to add app text input. Now we should set a bunch of props here. The first one is placeholder. We set this to email. The second one is icon. I want to put that before placeholder. So all these props are sorted. So I'm going to set the icon to email. We should also set auto capitalize to none. So with this, the first letter of our email is not going to get capitalized. Okay. We should also set autocorrect to false, because we don't want iOS or Android to correct our spelling. So what else do we need here? Next, we need to set keyboard type. Now, this is one of the problems with custom components. We don't have IntelliSense here. So if I press Control and space, we don't see anything. So when working with custom components, always have the documentation ready. So here's the text input component. Let's take a look at the keyboard type prop. So I'm going to set this to email address. This makes it easier to type an email address. So back to our code. We're going to set the keyboard type to email-address. And finally, the last prop I'm going to set here is text content type. This only works on iOS. When we set this to email address, iOS will be able to autofill this field from the keychain. So this is our first input field. After that, we need another input field for our password. So what props do we need here? Well, first we're going to set auto capitalize to none, because we don't want iOS or Android to automatically capitalize the first letter. Next, we set autocorrect to false. The reason is obvious. For the icon, I'm going to use the lock icon. We're going to set the placeholder to password. We're going to set the text content type prop, which only works on iOS, to password. Again, with this, iOS will be able to autofill this field from the keychain. And finally, we're going to set secure text entry to true. Or as I told you before, we can use the shorthand syntax so we can only type the prop name. So once again, note that I have sorted these props. This makes it easier to read this code. If you're looking for a particular prop, we can quickly see if it's in the list or not. Now let's add our login button. So right after that, we're going to add app button. I'm going to set the title to login. And for onPress, for now, we just want to log something to the console. But what are we going to log? Well, we need to add two state variables to our form. These variables represent the values in these input fields. So once again, we're going to use our state hook. Use state. We're going to declare two state variables. The first one is username or email. That's what I used here. And the second one is password. Password and set password. Let's make sure that auto import worked here. There you go. So useState is imported from React. Beautiful. Now we need to handle the onChanged text event of these input fields. So whenever the user types something here, we update our state variables. So right after keyboard type, I'm going to set onChange. Look, again, we don't have IntelliSense. So that's the problem with these custom components. Hopefully this will improve in the future. So onChanged text, here we pass a function that takes the text, and here we call set email to this text. One more time. onChanged text, we set it to a function, and here we call set password. Okay. Finally, when the user tries to log in, we want to log the email and password. So email and password. This is purely for testing. So let's test our app. Here's what we get. It looks pretty good to me. The only problem we have here is the lack of padding. We'll fix that in a minute. But before we do that, let's type something here. So programmingwithmosh@gmail.com and password is 123. So log in. Now look at the terminal. So we have the email and the password. Beautiful. So finally, let's add a style for our container. We're going to give this a padding of 10 pixels. And then we're going to apply this on the top. So here's our screen. We set the style to styles.container. Let's have one more look. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this. Next, we're going to talk about a popular library for building forms.